You wake up again. The same weight pressing down on your chest, that invisible heaviness that never seems to leave. You tell yourself it's just stress, exhaustion, another morning like the rest. But deep inside, something whispers, this isn't ordinary. The tension in your heart isn't random, it's spiritual. Fear has wrapped itself around you like invisible chains, and the enemy smiles every time you hesitate. Listen carefully now, because this is not coincidence. Heaven has paused your scrolling for a reason. You are being spoken to, directly and intentionally. You, who have felt the war in your chest. You, who have hidden your shaking hands and told others, I'm fine. You are not fine. Because you were never meant to live small. The reason fear targets you so violently is because obedience, rising within you, terrifies hell. It is written in the book of Isaiah, chapter 41, verse 10, So do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. Fear lies to you. It tells you that you are alone, that no one understands, that your prayers are lost in the noise. But God has been whispering through every storm, I am here. Every sleepless night, every tear that stained your pillow, none of them were wasted. You think fear proves you are weak, but in the kingdom, it proves you are marked. The presence of fear is often the evidence of destiny waking up. You see, the enemy doesn't waste energy on the ordinary. He attacks the ones with purpose. The greater your calling, the greater the pressure he applies. You've felt it not just in your mind, but in your bones, that trembling before every step of faith. And yet, deep within that trembling, obedience has been calling your name. Heaven has been waiting for you to move, not in confidence, but in surrender. There comes a moment in every chosen one's life when they must stop negotiating with fear. That moment is now. You can't reason with what was sent to paralyze you. Fear is not logical, it's spiritual warfare. It knows that if you ever obey, if you ever take that one courageous step, its power will break. Because obedience is the sound that darkness cannot endure. You have listened long enough to the voice that says, you can't. But what if that voice was never yours? What if it was planted there to keep you from stepping into everything God has been preparing? Heaven doesn't speak in anxiety. Heaven speaks in peace, even when it demands impossible obedience. The truth is, fear is loudest right before it loses. When the pressure rises, when the shaking intensifies, it means the chains are about to snap. The spiritual realm knows it the moment you choose to obey God instead of your fear. Everything changes. Every stronghold begins to crumble because obedience aligns you with heaven's authority. Maybe you've been praying for courage, but courage doesn't come first. Obedience does. Courage follows the act of obedience, not the other way around. You will never feel ready to do what God is asking. That's the test, the step into the unknown while your knees are trembling, trusting that He'll catch you mid-air. Right now, heaven is closer than you think. The Spirit of God is hovering over your uncertainty, over the place where you thought you'd break. And in that stillness, a divine exchange is waiting. If you will just obey, not tomorrow, not next week, but now, the weight that has suffocated your joy will lift. Fear will lose its legal right to torment you. You've been chosen not because you are fearless, but because you were made to conquer fear through obedience. This is not about perfection, it's about surrender. The moment you obey, you silence the voice that said you never could. So today, make a decision that all of hell will remember that you will no longer obey fear, that you will act even while afraid, that you will trust that the one who called you will not fail you. As you hear these words, let your heart agree with heaven. Break the agreement with fear. Declare aloud that you belong to God, that your obedience is your warfare, that no weapon formed against your mind will stand. This is your moment to rise. Share this message if it speaks to your soul. Like it so it finds another chosen one lost in their storm. Subscribe to stay anchored in these divine reminders, because your journey of breaking fear has only begun. And if you know this word is for you, let heaven see your response. Comment below 777 as a prophetic act that you choose obedience over fear. You are not who fear said you were. You are rising, chosen and unshaken. Every breath you take in obedience sends tremors through darkness. Keep standing. Keep trusting. Heaven is watching your yes. You begin to realize that what has been tormenting you isn't random. The patterns of fear that have haunted your mornings, the silent panic that grips you in the dark, none of it is coincidence. It is spiritual evidence. Something within you has been marked by heaven, and fear has recognized that mark before you fully did. The divine is awakening something inside you, and the enemy has been trying to smother it with anxiety, confusion, and delay. There's a moment when revelation pierces through your fog, the understanding that fear itself is a signal. It points not to your weakness, but to your calling. The deeper your fear, the greater the thing God has placed inside you. That's why every time you tried to take a step toward purpose, your chest tightened. That's why peace seemed so far away whenever you moved closer to obedience. The resistance wasn't proof that you were failing, it was confirmation that you were close to breakthrough. The divine diagnosis isn't that you're broken, it's that you've been under spiritual pressure because something holy inside you is growing. The shaking isn't punishment, it's preparation. God is teaching you to discern the difference between His voice and the voice of fear. One speaks of danger, the other speaks of destiny. You've spent so long asking, why am I like this? Why do I feel so heavy? But heaven answers, because you're carrying something sacred. Fear attacks what it anticipates. The enemy sees your future in a way that you sometimes cannot. He knows that once you walk in obedience, you will influence, heal, and awaken others. That's why he fights you hardest when you're on the edge of change. There are days when you look around and wonder why others seem unbothered, why their paths look simple while yours feels like an unending climb. But the truth is, ease has never been a sign of calling pressure, has. The oil of anointing is only produced through crushing. You are being refined through the very things that tried to destroy you. It was proclaimed in the book of Romans, chapter 8, verse 15. The Spirit you receive does not make you slaves, so that you live in fear again. The voice of God doesn't lead you into panic. It doesn't accuse. It doesn't torment. His Spirit brings conviction that lifts you upward, not shame that drags you down. When fear speaks, it points to disaster. When God speaks, it points to destiny. The tension you've been living in is the conflict between those two voices, one from the throne, the other from the pit. What if every tremor of fear was actually a reminder to listen deeper? What if each anxious thought was an invitation to lean closer to God's whisper? The problem isn't that you feel fear, it's that you've believed it held authority. But fear has authority only where obedience is delayed. Once you obey, fear's dominion ends. The divine diagnosis is this: your heart has been under siege because your purpose threatens darkness. You've been trained in spiritual warfare without realizing it. Every battle, every tear, every night of doubt has been shaping your discernment. You're learning how to recognize the counterfeit voices, how to stand when others fold, how to walk when you can't yet see the path. God is using your fear as a mirror to reveal where you've been placing your trust. When you trust in your own strength, fear thrives. When you shift your trust back to Him, fear withers. The battle isn't about fear itself, it's about allegiance. Which voice will you obey? There's a sacred irony in all this. The very heart that has been trembling is the one God chose to carry courage. You are not being punished, you're being prepared. Every wave that has crashed against you was allowed not to drown you, but to teach you that you were born to walk on water. You might not see it yet, but heaven does. The shaking inside you is the sound of destiny awakening. Fear doesn't mean you're failing, it means you're on holy ground. Each heartbeat, though it feels heavy, is a drum calling you to rise. The diagnosis of heaven isn't despair, it's divine purpose waiting to be revealed through obedience. And when you finally see fear for what it is, a counterfeit prophecy of failure, you will also see what God has been saying all along, that you are already equipped, that your trembling doesn't disqualify you, that His Spirit within you is greater than the storm surrounding you. So breathe again. You are not sick. You are being summoned. Fear has been loud because your destiny has been growing louder. You are stepping into awareness now, realizing that fear has been a signal, not a sentence. The shaking inside you is heaven's confirmation that your awakening has already begun. And nothing can silence what God ignited. Your spirit is learning to breathe in truth and exhale every lie. What once felt like breaking is actually birthing. Stand firm. The same fire that tested you will one day testify for you. You've seen it, how the enemy uses subtlety instead of storms. He doesn't always arrive with thunder or obvious chaos. Sometimes he comes softly, whispering half-truths that sound logical but breed paralysis. He replays your past, magnifies your failures, and wraps them in the language of caution. You tell yourself you're thinking it through, but really, you're delaying obedience. The enemy smiles every time you overanalyze what God already said. Fear doesn't begin as panic, it begins as suggestion. It questions your worth, your readiness, your calling. It doesn't shout, "Give up." It whispers, "Maybe not today." And before you know it, hesitation becomes habit, and habit becomes bondage. You start believing that the war is in your circumstances, when in truth, it's in your perception. The voice of fear never seeks your destruction outright, it seeks your delay, because delayed obedience is still disobedience. The devil knows he cannot stop what God has decreed, but he can convince you to slow it down. He can keep you looping through almost brave, almost faithful, almost obedient. But the kingdom is not built on almost. It is built on those who act even when afraid, who obey even when uncertain, who say yes before understanding the how. That's why your mind has been under siege, because obedience threatens the very structure of darkness. The more you listen to fear's logic, the quieter God's instructions sound. The Word of God declares in the Gospel of John, chapter 10, verse 10, "The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I have come that they may have life, and have it to the full." The enemy's strategy has always been theft, stealing your peace, killing your confidence, destroying your faith in progress. He doesn't need to take everything from you. He just needs to make you believe that what you have isn't enough. Once you believe that lie, he wins, because fear thrives where gratitude dies. You must learn to recognize the manipulation. Fear often disguises itself as wisdom. It says, "Wait until you're ready." But faith says, "Move while you're trembling." Fear says, "Protect yourself." But God says, "Lose yourself in me." The enemy counterfeits discernment so you'll trust his version of safety instead of God's promise of victory. Every what-if that plays in your mind is a seed planted to paralyze. What if I fail? What if I lose everything? What if it's not God speaking? Yet the greater question, what if it is, rarely crosses your mind, because fear muffles the sound of faith. You must flip the questions back toward heaven. What if obedience opens the door you've been praying for? What if risk is the exact key to your release? This is the silent manipulation. The devil doesn't always fight you with darkness. He fights you with distortion. He reframes your experiences until you think fear is wisdom and obedience is recklessness. But those who are chosen must learn that divine logic doesn't fit earthly equations. Sometimes, faith looks foolish until it works. You've believed the wrong storyteller for too long. Every regret you've replayed has been edited by the enemy. He removes the mercy. He cuts out the redemption. He freezes you at the moment of failure. But God sees the full story. He sees what you learned, how you grew, how even your detours were rerouted for His glory. You are not defined by manipulation. You are defined by revelation. And the revelation is this: you were never meant to survive through fear, but to thrive through obedience. Heaven's instruction is not cruel, it's curative. Every step of obedience is an antidote to anxiety. So, when fear says, "Don't move," remember, standing still is also a decision. Every delay is a doorway for the enemy to plant more doubt. But when you obey, even trembling, heaven calls it victory. Let your spirit remember who the real enemy is. It's not your circumstance, not your past, not even your weakness. It's the voice that twists truth into hesitation. Once you expose it, it loses its disguise. Now, if this word pierced something inside you, if you recognize the enemy's manipulation at work in your own thoughts, then this is your moment to respond. Don't overthink it. Don't hesitate. Let heaven see your agreement right now. Comment, "I choose light." Because when you declare those words, you're announcing to every power of darkness that its influence ends today. You are choosing revelation over deception, truth over manipulation, and obedience over fear. Heaven records your choice, and that declaration will echo far beyond your screen tonight. When you type, "I choose light," you are not just commenting words, you are prophesying over your life. You're declaring that truth has replaced confusion, that darkness no longer has ownership of your thoughts or your future. Each letter becomes a banner of victory over fear. Heaven witnesses your declaration and marks it as obedience in action. From this moment forward, every shadow that followed you begins to fade in the brightness of divine revelation. The battle you face is not outside, it's within. The war that rages in your mind is where destinies are either delayed or released. You've felt it, haven't you? The tension between faith and fear, between surrender and control. You stand in a battlefield unseen, where every anxious thought becomes a dart, and every whisper of obedience becomes a weapon. You think you're overthinking, but in truth, you're under spiritual attack. The enemy knows that if he can occupy your thoughts, he can control your movements. That's why he doesn't always need to break your body. He only needs to bind your mind. Fear thrives in the silence between thoughts, waiting for your agreement. But heaven has given you something stronger, the authority to refuse those lies. The apostle reminds us in his second letter to the Corinthians, chapter 10, verse 5, "We take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ." You've read that verse before, but maybe you didn't realize how literal it is. You are meant to take captive the thoughts that threaten your peace. You don't let them sit and multiply, you arrest them. Every thought that says, "I can't." Every memory that says, "I failed." Every fear that says, "It's too late." Those are trespassers. You don't entertain trespassers, you evict them. This war of the mind isn't about intellect. It's about agreement. The mind that agrees with fear becomes a prison, but the mind that agrees with God becomes a weapon. You've spent too long rehearsing defeat in your head, creating scenarios that haven't even happened. That's how fear wins. It tricks you into living in futures God never wrote. There's a strategy heaven wants you to see fear can't create. It can only imitate. It takes your imagination, a gift meant for vision and creation, and turns it into a canvas for worry. God gave you imagination so you could see what faith could build. The enemy corrupts it so you'll only see what could go wrong. That's why the greatest warfare isn't outside, it's inside your head. You must become intentional about your mental gates. What are you feeding your spirit? What do you let echo in your mind before you sleep? Fear grows in the soil of neglect. When you stop renewing your mind, old lies begin to bloom again. But when you fill your mind with God's word, fear begins to starve. You've seen how quickly your mood shifts, how one thought can pull you from peace to panic. That's because your thoughts aren't passive, they're powerful. They carry spiritual weight. Every time you dwell on fear, you're constructing walls that block divine perspective. Every time you meditate on truth, you're tearing those walls down. There is a moment in every battle where the mind must decide which voice to follow. You can't silence every lie that comes, but you can refuse to host it. A thought only becomes a stronghold when you nurture it. The enemy's goal is not to make you evil, it's to make you exhausted. He knows that a weary mind rarely worships. So he attacks you through repetition, through familiar thoughts, through subtle guilt. But heaven is retraining you now. You are learning to recognize which thoughts carry peace and which carry panic. God's voice never rushes, never condemns, never creates chaos. The more you obey that voice, the quieter fear becomes. Every obedient thought is an act of war against darkness. Every declaration of truth dismantles something unseen. Do you see now why obedience matters? It's not just about actions, it's about alignment. When your thoughts align with truth, your emotions follow. When your emotions align with truth, your decisions change. You no longer react from fear, you respond from faith. The silent war in your mind is where victory begins. No one can fight it for you, but God has equipped you with the power to command peace. You don't need to beg for strength, you already have authority. The same Spirit that raised Jesus from the dead lives in you. That means even your thoughts can resurrect from fear to faith. There will be days when fear still knocks on your door. That's not failure. It's an opportunity. Each time you choose to obey truth over terror, you're training your mind to think like heaven. And eventually, what once terrified you will no longer even move you. So when the battle comes, and it will remember who you are not the victim of your thoughts. You are their commander. You are the keeper of your mental gates, the guardian of your peace. The battlefield of the mind belongs to no one but you and the God who reigns within you. You are learning the language of victory, one thought at a time. The silence that once scared you now becomes sacred ground where peace begins to speak louder than panic. Every time you choose truth, heaven applauds. Your obedience echoes beyond the natural, rewriting the atmosphere around you with faith. The battlefield of your mind is becoming holy territory. There comes a point when your soul grows tired of wrestling with shadows. You've been fighting battles that no one else can see, hoping one day peace will simply appear. But peace isn't found, it's surrendered into. The more you try to hold control, the heavier the fear becomes. Control feels safe, but it is an illusion. Every time you grip tighter, your spirit suffocates a little more. Heaven has been whispering this truth gently to you. Freedom doesn't come by mastering fear. It comes by surrendering to God. You've tried to fix everything, to make sense of every unanswered prayer, to keep yourself from falling apart. Yet, the breakthrough never came through. Striving it waits for surrender. Because obedience is not the end of your freedom, it is the doorway to it. According to what is revealed in the book of Proverbs, chapter 3, verses 5 to 6, trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your paths straight. That verse sounds peaceful, doesn't it? But living it requires bravery, the kind that lets go when everything inside you wants to hold on. You are not weak for trembling. You are human. You are divine clay, learning to yield to the hands of the potter. And every time you release your need to understand, you make room for God to move. Fear convinces you that surrender means loss. But in God's kingdom, surrender is strategy. It is how you win wars without lifting a sword. It is how you silence storms without shouting. The moment you stop striving and say, Lord, have your way, heaven moves on your behalf in ways you cannot imagine. Surrender doesn't mean you do nothing. It means you stop fighting God. It means you step aside so that grace can do what effort never could. When you let go, you are not falling into emptiness. You are falling into his hands. It's strange, isn't it? How fear feels familiar. You almost learn to live with it. But God never called you to survive your storms. He called you to rise above them. The power that raised Christ from the grave is not intimidated by your uncertainty. It dwells in you, waiting to be activated through trust. In this stillness, you begin to understand obedience is the language of surrender, and surrender is the song of the fearless. When you yield your plans, your timing, your fears, you are not losing control. You are giving control back to the one who never fails. There's a quiet beauty in surrender that words can barely touch. It is not dramatic or loud. It's the deep exhale after years of holding your breath. It's the realization that you never had to carry it all alone. It's the tear that falls, not from despair, but from release. You finally stop asking, "What if it doesn't work out?" and begin to whisper, "Even if it doesn't, He is still good." This is the moment heaven has been waiting for, not your perfection, not your strength, but your yes. That gentle, trembling yes that says, "God, I trust you even here." That's where peace enters, where fear starts to crumble, and where obedience begins to bloom. Now, as these words settle into you, something sacred is happening. A quiet invitation rises, not from me, but from the Spirit who speaks softly through stillness. Somewhere within, you feel it, the nudge to open your heart wider, to let more light in. That's not manipulation, that's recognition. Your spirit recognizes truth because it came from the same breath that first gave you life. If your heart feels that stirring, if something inside you whispers, "This is for me," then let it be your offering. Let your response be your yes, not to me, not to a voice on a screen, but to the God who keeps calling you by name. And as you feel that yes rise, may you also remember that you are not alone in this journey. There are others walking beside you, unseen but chosen like you, stepping into obedience one breath at a time. Together, your collective surrender creates a ripple of light that touches lives far beyond your own. So, if this message resonates, don't rush away. Let it linger. Let it move through you like a soft wind. And when your heart feels ready, not because you're told, but because you want to share this flame so that it may warm another soul still trembling in the cold, let your simple act a quiet like, a silent share, a gentle subscribe, be a candle placed in the dark, not out of duty, but out of love, because every spark of light you pass on becomes part of heaven's fire, and someone somewhere will find their courage through the glow you left behind. There comes a silence that doesn't feel peaceful at first, a holy stillness that feels like exposure. You try to pray, but your words stumble. You try to believe, yet fear still coils in your chest. And in that quiet, God doesn't rush to remove your fear. Instead, He reveals it, because what you don't face, you can't be freed from. Heaven isn't punishing you by showing you your fear. Heaven is diagnosing it. God doesn't expose to shame, He exposes to heal. That is why some seasons feel heavy, not because you're abandoned, but because you're being invited into truth. And truth, though it cuts, also cleanses. The Spirit spoke through the second letter to Timothy, chapter 1, verse 7. For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, of love, and of a sound mind. That verse isn't poetic comfort, it's a weapon. It reminds you that fear isn't from God, which means you have no obligation to host it. You have entertained fear long enough, calling it caution, calling it wisdom, calling it realism. But the Spirit of God says otherwise. What you thought was protection was really a prison. And it's time for the cell door to open. Fear has been wearing masks in your life. It hides in your conversations, your relationships, even your prayers. It pretends to be humility when you shrink from purpose, pretending you're not ready. It disguises itself as responsibility when you delay what God asked you to do. It even hides in your desire for confirmation. You say you're waiting for a sign. But sometimes that waiting is fear dressed as reverence. But God is confronting your fear now, not to destroy you, but to distinguish you. He's showing you what's his voice and what's not. Because you can't obey two masters. One says go, the other says stay safe. One builds your faith, the other builds your cage. When fear whispers, you'll fail. God says, you're mine. When fear says, what if they reject you? God says, they rejected me too. When fear says, you're not enough, God says, that's why my grace is. The voice that contradicts love is never his. You may feel like this confrontation is breaking you, but it's actually birthing you. You are not being undone, you are being remade. Fear has lost its disguise, and you are learning to call it by name, not your companion, not your identity, but your old captor. In this stillness, something begins to shift. You sense that the trembling in your chest is not defeat. It's deliverance. Heaven is turning your shaking into power. Every heartbeat that once echoed with panic now beats in rhythm with promise. You are standing in the sacred space where obedience begins to outrun fear. Don't resist this season of exposure. Let God show you the roots, the moments in childhood when fear first whispered that you were unwanted, the betrayals that taught you to distrust love, the failures that built walls around your faith. Bring them into the light. The darkness only holds power over what you keep hidden. As you face those roots, remember God isn't disappointed in your fear. He's determined to free you from it. This confrontation is not rejection, it's redemption in motion. And when the weight becomes unbearable, whisper this truth: fear is not my portion. You are not meant to manage fear. You are meant to overcome it. So here, in this holy moment, God leans close to your trembling heart and speaks softly. Do not run from what I'm revealing. I am not trying to hurt you. I am trying to heal you. Let those words sink in. Let them uncoil what's been knotted for years. The light you're stepping into might sting at first, but it will save you. Because what God confronts, He conquers. And when you feel that first deep breath of peace return, know that fear is losing its grip. That moment, that breath is heaven's proof that deliverance has begun. Now, if you feel that stirring inside, that small pulse of courage rising, that's not coincidence. That's obedience waking up. Let this moment seal something in your spirit. Let heaven see your agreement that you will no longer submit to fear. Comment below 444. Not as superstition, but as a sign, a symbol that you are walking into divine stability. 4 corners of the earth, 4 winds, 4 directions. You are declaring that no matter where fear tries to hide, your obedience will meet it there. You are surrounded not by anxiety, but by divine order. Let 444 be your prophetic echo, heaven's reminder that structure is returning, that your spirit is being rebuilt, and that peace is now your foundation. When you type 444, you are declaring alignment: body, mind, and spirit returning to divine order. It's not a number, it's a covenant between your heart and heaven. Each digit becomes a pillar of restoration, marking that fear's authority has ended. The winds of obedience now carry your name, and peace builds its home within you. There is always a moment before breakthrough that feels unbearable. It's the space where faith and fear collide, and you stand trembling between what you see and what you've been promised. Every chosen one reaches this edge, the breaking point where obedience feels impossible, and silence from heaven feels cruel. Yet this is where your story begins to turn. The breaking point is not where you are abandoned, it's where you are reborn. You think you're falling apart, but really, you are falling into alignment. Every fracture in your soul is making room for glory. Every piece that feels shattered is being rearranged by divine design. The pain you feel is the sound of old chains snapping. The voice of heaven has not left you. It has simply gone deeper beneath the noise of panic. Beyond the reach of your fears, God often speaks most clearly when everything else grows quiet. That's why fear grows louder right before you obey. It's fighting for its last breath. The moment you step, the moment you say yes, fear's grip breaks. Heaven speaks through the book of Joshua, chapter 1, verse 9. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid, do not be discouraged. For the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. That command is not a suggestion, it's a lifeline. God doesn't ask you to be fearless, He commands it because His presence makes fear powerless. The breaking point you face isn't a sign that you've lost faith, it's the final test to prove it. Every step forward in obedience, even while trembling, declares to darkness, you no longer own me. Sometimes, the breaking point looks like loneliness. The people who once understood you suddenly don't. The voices that once encouraged you fall silent. You pray, and the heavens seem closed. But this isolation is not punishment, it's purification. God removes the noise so you can finally recognize His tone. The silence you dread is actually the stage where clarity is born. You may not see it yet, but there's holy fire in this breaking. Fire doesn't only destroy, it refines. It burns away illusions, pride, dependence on others, and the false safety nets you've built. You asked God to make you stronger, and He's doing it not through ease, but through endurance. The breaking point is the birthplace of unshakable faith, until something inside you breaks. You don't fully know what cannot be broken. You thought strength meant holding everything together. But strength in God is the ability to let go and still stand. You are being taught how to bow without breaking, how to bleed without quitting, how to lose and still worship. Look closer at this moment of pain. It's not the end of your story, it's the crossing point. The Red Sea only opened when the Israelites stood at its edge. Daniel met the angel only after he entered the lion's den. Jesus conquered death only by facing it. Every divine victory is preceded by a moment that looks like defeat. This is yours. You may not understand why the pressure is this intense, but heaven does. Pressure purifies motives, exposing what was built from faith and what was built from fear. It squeezes out dependency on everything temporary until all that remains is trust. You are being prepared for something that cannot be carried by the fearful. That's why this season hurts, because courage is being carved into your bones. There is a power in stepping forward when you can't see the ground. That's what obedience looks like at the breaking point. Faith that doesn't ask for explanation, only permission to move. Each trembling step forward becomes a declaration that fear will not write your next chapter. And when you do step, even if it's just one small act of faith, something shifts in the unseen. Heaven honors movement. The ground that once felt like quicksand becomes holy. You realize that obedience was never about feeling strong. It was about trusting the one who already is. So, if you find yourself standing at your own edge, heart racing, hands shaking, remember this: God is not asking you to leap blindly. He's asking you to step faithfully. There's a difference. A blind leap depends on chance, A faithful step depends on his character, and his character has never failed you. You will not drown here. You will not be consumed. The very thing that tried to break you will become the evidence that you were unbreakable. What fear meant for ruin, God is turning into revelation. At your breaking point, heaven doesn't back away, it leans in closer. The fire you face is not there to burn you, but to reveal that you were flame all along. You are not standing in failure, you are standing in formation. Every tear you shed here becomes water for the seeds of courage sprouting within you. Soon, what once broke you will bow to you. The ashes of this season will testify that obedience, not fear, carried you into the fire and through it. You begin to walk again, slower this time, but stronger. The path ahead is not smooth. Yet something inside you has shifted. You no longer crave comfort, you crave clarity. You no longer beg God to remove the fire, you ask Him to walk with you through it. Because you've learned that the same fire that frightens you also frees you. The heat of hardship no longer surprises you. You've stopped asking, "Why me?" and begun to ask, "What are you making in me through this?" That is the difference between survival and surrender. The chosen do not escape the flames, they are refined by them. The Word of God speaks in the book of Isaiah, chapter 43, verse 2, "When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned, the flames will not set you ablaze." That promise isn't metaphorical, it's literal in the Spirit. Every obedient act you take feels like walking through fire. But heaven has ensured that this fire refines, not destroys. What you feel burning away are the layers of fear, pride, doubt, and dependence on others that once defined you. You are shedding the false skins of identity that were never truly yours. This is the beauty and brutality of obedience. It demands the death of everything counterfeit. Every time you choose God's way over your comfort, something old in you dies. And while it hurts, that pain is sacred, it's resurrection pain. You are being made new. You once thought obedience would make life easier. Instead, it has made you braver. It has forced you to look at yourself through heaven's mirror, unfiltered, raw, and real. The reflection isn't always flattering, but it's honest. It's there, in that painful honesty, that transformation begins. Fire is honest too. It doesn't lie. It doesn't flatter. It reveals what can't endure and refines what was always meant to remain. You've tried to run from it, to pray it away. But God in His mercy has held you in it not to punish, but to purify. The flames you fear are forming you into someone unshakable. You are learning that protection is not the absence of fire, but the presence of God within it. Your safety isn't in the lack of heat, it's in the certainty that you won't be consumed. Sometimes, obedience means walking through what others flee from. It means staying when you'd rather run, trusting when you'd rather control, and forgiving when you'd rather harden. Every step through the fire feels like loss at first, but later it becomes strength. Because fire doesn't only destroy, it reveals what's indestructible. The Shadrachs and Meshachs of this generation are born in furnaces, not gardens. And you, too, are one of them. You've been asking for God to show His power, and He's been waiting for you to step into the conditions where that power becomes visible. His glory is revealed in the fire, not away from it. Look around your life right now at the trials that feel too hot to handle, at the relationships that seem to burn instead of heal, at the uncertainties that feel like molten ground under your feet. Each of them is a fire appointed, not random. You are walking through them, not toward destruction, but toward definition. The enemy wants you to interpret the heat as punishment, but it's not. It's proof of your process. It's the refining of gold in real time. And the more intense the fire, the purer the outcome. That's why heaven isn't panicking, because God knows the end result, already: your endurance, your purity, your radiance. You are learning how to walk differently now, not rushing to escape every trial, but asking what each flame is teaching you. You are learning to trust the God of process, not just the God of promise. And that shift, that trust, is what terrifies hell most. The fire that was meant to break you is the same fire that reveals you. You no longer see pain as punishment, you see it as participation in something holy. You are becoming the proof that obedience doesn't shield you from heat, it shields you from harm. So, keep walking. Chosen one. Not because you love the fire, but because you love the one who walks beside you in it. Every step you take in obedience becomes an act of worship. Every moment you stay faithful inside, the flame becomes a testimony written in smoke and light. And when you emerge, because you will, your clothes will not even smell like the fire you've passed through. You will not just survive, you will shine. You will look back and see that the fire was never against you, it was for you. Every spark was a sculptor's touch, carving strength and beauty into your once fractured spirit. Now your soul glows where it once trembled. The same flames that once frightened you have become your light. You carry the warmth of heaven into every dark place you enter. There comes a moment in the journey when you no longer flinch at fear's shadow. You've walked through fire. You've faced the silence. And you've learned that the very thing that once hunted you now hides from your light. This is the awakening when you remember who you are. And fear remembers why it once trembled at your name. You begin to realize that your identity was never rooted in what scared you, but in who sent you. Heaven didn't choose you because you were fearless. Heaven chose you because you were willing. Your courage doesn't come from perfection, it comes from presence. The presence of the one who called you by name, even when your voice was shaking. We find in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 10, verse 19. I have given you authority to trample on snakes and scorpions and to overcome all the power of the enemy. Nothing will harm you. That authority isn't reserved for saints carved in stone. It lives in you. The moment you believed, you inherited heaven's power. Yet fear tried to make you forget. It tried to rewrite your story, to make you think you were the hunted instead of the chosen. But this truth stands unshaken. Light doesn't run from darkness. Darkness runs from light. Every time you choose to believe again, even after disappointment, heaven calls that warfare. Every time you pray instead of panic, you're winning. Every time you forgive when bitterness would feel easier, you're disarming the enemy. That's what being chosen looks like, not perfection, but persistence. You have walked through enough nights to recognize dawn. The way you carry yourself now, quieter, more certain, unbothered by storms, that's the reflection of a soul that's been refined. You used to beg God to make fear disappear. But now you've learned that peace isn't the absence of fear, it's the mastery of it. Fear no longer owns your vocabulary. It no longer writes your decisions. You no longer wake up wondering if you'll make it through. You wake up knowing you will. That's not arrogance, it's awareness. You're aware that divine authority isn't a feeling, it's a fact. Every chosen one must reach this revelation. Fear was never your enemy. Agreement was. You gave fear permission by believing its lies. But the moment you stopped agreeing, its power died. You broke the contract. You cancelled its access. Now you walk in authority that hell can't revoke. When you speak now, the atmosphere listens. When you worship, chains snap, not because you're loud, but because you're aligned. Your obedience has recalibrated your entire reality. You used to ask, God, why me? But now you whisper, thank you for trusting me with this fire. You carry divine authority, but with humility. You no longer fight to prove yourself. You stand in peace and let your presence preach. Darkness recognizes light. It always does. You don't need to announce who you are. The spiritual realm already knows. You are a walking declaration that God's power still works through trembling hands. Your scars are no longer signs of defeat. They are royal markings of survival. They tell the world that fear tried and failed. The enemy's greatest weapon became heaven's greatest testimony. That's the paradox of divine identity. What was meant to crush you crowns you instead. You have stepped into fearless identity. You walk not as a survivor, but as a sovereign one authorized by heaven to command peace wherever chaos tries to live. And now, as your heart receives this truth, a gentle instruction rises from within, not from me, but from the Spirit stirring inside you. The moment has come for you to acknowledge what has already shifted in your atmosphere. Comment, fear ends here. Let that short phrase be more than text. Let it be a decree. You're not begging fear to leave, you're evicting it. When you type those words, heaven bears witness. It's not a ritual, it's recognition. You're agreeing with divine reality that fear has reached its expiration date in your story. Because every time a chosen one declares truth aloud, darkness loses territory. Your declaration tonight is not small. It is the sound of freedom echoing through your generation. When you type fear ends here, you are not making a wish, you are issuing a verdict. You are drawing a spiritual line that separates who you were from who you are becoming. Those 3 words echo through the unseen, announcing to every lingering shadow that its permission to torment you has been revoked. Heaven hears it as covenant language, the sound of a soul reclaiming authority. Your angels recognize that phrase as a command to close old gates and open new paths. The fear that used to dictate your choices will now bow to your peace. This is not emotion, this is enforcement. You are enforcing heaven's decree over your life. So, as you write it, feel the shift in your atmosphere. The weight begins to lift. The air grows lighter, and your spirit stands taller. Because you didn't just comment, you declared a revolution inside your soul. There's something sacred about immediate obedience. Not delayed, not negotiated, not reasoned into immediate. That kind of obedience doesn't wait for perfect timing, it creates it. It doesn't ask for clarity before moving, it moves. And clarity follows. This is where fear finally loses its footing, when you stop asking, what if, and start saying, even if. You've spent much of your life waiting for the right moment to obey. You thought peace would come first, courage second, and obedience last. But heaven's order is different. Obedience comes first, and everything else follows. That's why the enemy attacks your sense of timing. He convinces you that later is still safe. But later often becomes never. The Spirit has been nudging you gently, even when you didn't realize it. A thought here, a whisper there. Call them. Forgive that. Start now. You've felt those moments. Those holy interruptions that feel inconvenient but divine. Those are not coincidences. They're divine appointments. Windows that open for a moment and close if ignored. Heaven speaks through the book of James, chapter 1, verse 22. Do not merely listen to the word, and so deceive yourselves. Do what it says. That scripture doesn't ask for debate, it invites motion. Faith is never meant to be a theory, it's a rhythm, a movement, a living pulse inside you. Every act of obedience becomes a spark that lights up the darkness around you. You may think your small obedience doesn't matter, that it's insignificant compared to the grand miracles you read about. But the kingdom counts differently. What you call small, heaven calls seed. The smallest yes can reroute an entire future. Consider this. Noah didn't understand rain, but he built anyway. Abraham didn't know the destination, but he walked anyway. Peter didn't wait for calm seas. He stepped out anyway. The pattern is clear. Obedience before understanding. That's where miracles live. Maybe God has been asking you to step again into forgiveness, into faith, into the unknown. You keep waiting to feel ready. But obedience isn't about readiness, it's about trust. When you move in obedience, heaven moves with you. The very ground that terrified you becomes holy under your feet. Sometimes, the miracle isn't in what changes outside of you, but what awakens inside. That's what immediate obedience does. It awakens parts of your spirit that fear had put to sleep. You remember that you were born for boldness, not hesitation. You remember that the spirit inside you was never timid. It was fierce, tender, and unstoppable. So what is God asking of you now? It might not be dramatic. It might simply be silence when you want to argue, generosity when you want to protect, movement when you want to wait. The point isn't the size of the act, it's the speed of your response. Obedience trains your spirit to trust, even when logic protests. It's how you build spiritual muscle. Each yes makes the next one easier. Each act of surrender rewires your instincts from fear to faith. And soon, obedience stops feeling like loss. It starts feeling like breathing. There's a quiet power in this. You begin to notice heaven's timing aligning around you, doors opening that used to resist, relationships healing without your effort, strength returning where you once felt empty. These are the echoes of obedience, the ripple effect that your faith sets in motion. And as you feel these words settle into your spirit, imagine this moment as light falling through a window, not forced, just flowing. That's how divine invitation works. It never pushes, it simply shines until you turn toward it. So if this message stirs something inside you, not pressure, but peace, let that be your sign. The light that touches your heart right now isn't mine, it's His. And what you do with that light becomes part of your worship. If you choose to reflect that light to let it travel further, you'll find beauty in that act itself. A simple gesture, quiet and voluntary, like placing a candle beside another candle. When one burns, both shine brighter. So when your heart feels ready, let your light extend through a gentle like that, whispers, I'm here, through a quiet share that passes hope to another soul still trembling in their waiting. And if this space has become a soft corner for your spirit, then let your subscribe be a promise, not to a person, but to your own growth. These are not commands, they are invitations, acts of reflection, small flickers of obedience in a digital wilderness. Each click, each whisper of yes, is like placing another lantern on the path, helping someone else see the way you've begun to walk. Let it be beautiful. Let it be yours. Let it be worship. Every obedient act becomes a candle in the dark, lighting paths you'll never walk yourself. That's how heaven multiplies light through hearts that quietly say yes. And one day, when you least expect it, someone will find warmth in the flame you left behind and whisper, "Their obedience helped me believe again." There's a calm that begins to settle after obedience takes root, not the calm of ease, but the calm of certainty. You wake up one morning and realize the storm hasn't disappeared, yet your heart doesn't quake like it used to. You've built something invisible inside you, trust. It's become your armor, your quiet defense against the noise that once ruled your mind. You are learning that trust isn't passive. It's not folding your hands and waiting for life to behave. It's active resistance against fear's narrative. It's the decision to believe that what God said still stands, even when everything else contradicts it. You are beginning to live from a new kind of strength, not loud, not fragile, but steady. We are reminded through the book of Psalms, chapter 56, verse 3. "When I am afraid, I put my trust in you." That verse doesn't deny fear's existence, it declares its submission. Trust doesn't erase fear, it dethrones it. You've learned that trust and fear can't rule the same heart at once. When trust enters, fear must vacate. And that's what's been happening quietly inside you, a change of authority. The throne of your heart no longer belongs to anxiety, it belongs to faith. This armor of trust doesn't glitter. It isn't made of confidence or charisma. It's made of memory. Every time you recall what God already brought you through, you forge another layer of protection. Remember the nights you thought you wouldn't make it, the mornings you rose anyway. Each of those moments became metal. Each memory, a shield. Trust isn't something you build in comfort. It's forged in the fire of unanswered prayers and unfulfilled promises. It's formed in the pauses between miracles. It's strengthened when God seems silent and fear seems loud. You are walking proof that silence doesn't mean absence, because if He were absent, you wouldn't have survived the seasons you did. Sometimes you mistake peace for lack of progress. You wonder if your calm means nothing is happening. But peace is not the absence of movement, it's the evidence that God is now steering the ship. You've handed Him the wheel. And even when waves crash, your spirit no longer panics, it trusts the captain. Trust doesn't ignore reality, it redefines it. You still see the mountain, but you no longer measure its height. You still see the storm, but you remember who commands the wind. Trust is the anchor that keeps you steady when logic would have let you drift. The armor of trust can't be bought, only built. It's customized to your story, every scar, every loss, every waiting season. The parts of you that once felt weakest are now welded into your protection. Where you once broke, you now shine. You are learning to fight differently now. You no longer swing wildly at fear, you stand firm. Because you've learned that trust fights best by resting. You've stopped reacting to every threat. Stopped chasing validation. Stopped trying to prove your worth. That stillness is strength. The enemy can't touch a soul that refuses to panic. It may look to others like you've grown quiet, but heaven knows the truth. Your silence is strategy. You are no longer wasting words trying to convince fear to leave. You've realized that trust doesn't negotiate. It simply stands until the trembling stops. The armor you wear now isn't seen, but it's felt. Every time fear tries to strike, it meets resistance. Every time doubt whispers, it collides with remembrance. Trust has changed the texture of your soul. It's turned you from reactive to resolute. And though this armor is invisible, it carries weight in the unseen. The spiritual realm recognizes what you carry now. That's why certain attacks no longer touch you, not because the enemy gave up, but because he recognizes futility. This peace you walk in isn't naive. It's not blind optimism. It's built on scars that have become scriptures in your memory, testimonies etched into your being that say, "He was faithful then. He will be faithful now." So when you move forward now, you do so covered not by arrogance, but by assurance. You are clothed in remembrance, crowned with gratitude, wrapped in unshakable faith. And though fear may still try to whisper, its words can no longer pierce. This is what maturity in faith looks like, not noise, not spectacle, but sacred stillness. You've learned that trust is the loudest silence heaven can hear. So walk clothed in that armor. Let peace be your rhythm, and remembrance be your defense. The same God who guarded you before will guard you again, not from the absence of battle, but from the loss of heart within it. Every sunrise now feels different. It doesn't promise ease, but assurance. You wake knowing that trust has become your language, and peace your constant companion in every unknown. Even if storms gather again, you won't fear them. The armor you wear is invisible but unbreakable, forged by faith, sealed by obedience, and strengthened through every battle you've survived. There's a beauty in divine exchange, that quiet moment when heaven takes what once defined you and replaces it with something eternal. You've lived long enough with trembling in your chest, calling it personality, calling it survival. But God has always seen it differently. What you call weakness, He calls material. It's what He molds to reveal His strength. The transformation is subtle at first. You don't even notice the shift happening within. One morning, you wake and realize you've stopped rehearsing fear's lies. You've stopped bracing for disaster. The same places that once triggered panic now feel strangely still. That's because the exchange has begun, the trading of trembling for peace, of fear for faith. The Word of God speaks through the book of Ezekiel, chapter 36, verse 26. "I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit in you. I will remove from you your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh." That promise was never meant to sound poetic, it's surgical. God doesn't patch up your old heart, He replaces it. He takes the hardened places, the wounds that made you cautious, the memories that built walls around your faith, and He breathes new life into them. What once closed you off now opens you to His voice. You are living in that exchange right now. The fear that once defined your rhythm is being rewritten into courage. The ache that used to drain you is becoming an altar. Heaven is repurposing everything. Every broken piece is being integrated into your new design. This is the mystery of grace. God doesn't remove your history, He redeems it. Your scars don't vanish, they start to shine. They become proof that divine surgery took place. People may still see the marks, But what they'll feel around you is peace. You can sense the change inside like a gentle pulse you didn't feel before. It's not adrenaline, it's alignment. You are learning to live from a healed heart, not a guarded one. That's the difference between surviving and living. Survival runs from pain, healing walks through it. You no longer have to defend yourself against what God has already defeated. The voices that used to dictate your worth sound distant now, like echoes from a world you've outgrown. That's how freedom feels, not loud, but light. And with this new heart comes new sensitivity. You start to feel what heaven feels. You notice pain in others and move with compassion instead of comparison. You start hearing whispers of purpose in places you once overlooked. That's the Spirit at work, guiding, awakening, restoring. Every divine exchange requires surrender, a letting go before a taking up. It's not comfortable, but it's necessary. You can't hold on to your old self and receive the new one at the same time. God's hands are gentle but firm. He won't force you, but He won't let you settle either. So when you feel that tug, that quiet call to release what no longer fits, know that it's heaven preparing space for the miracle. Fear can't coexist with the Spirit that now lives in you. You are being rebuilt from the inside out. The world may not notice the difference yet, but heaven does. Every decision you make from peace instead of panic is a victory. Every time you breathe deeply instead of breaking down, heaven celebrates. This is what transformation looks like, not perfection, but presence. You've reached a new spiritual altitude now. Where fear struggles to breathe, the air here feels lighter, cleaner. You are standing in a reality where obedience doesn't cost you peace, it produces it. And the more you live from this place, the harder it becomes for darkness to find you. Now, as this truth settles over you, take a moment to acknowledge what's happening inside. You've received a new heart, not just healed, but holy. And heaven records that exchange. Let this be your prophetic declaration of completion, your sign to heaven that the divine exchange is sealed. Comment below 111. Not superstition, but symbol, one line. One truth, one alignment. 111 is heaven's code for unity, one God, one calling, one heart made new. When you write it, you're declaring that your spirit is now in oneness with His will, no longer divided between fear and faith. Each one stands as a pillar, Father, Son, and Spirit surrounding your renewed heart. It marks the beginning of alignment, the agreement between heaven's purpose and your obedience. When you type 111, you aren't just numbering, you are numbering your new beginning. When you type 111, you're stepping into divine synchronization. It's a whisper to heaven that your heart, mind, and spirit are now moving as one rhythm under God's guidance and grace. This number becomes your silent declaration, I am aligned. Heaven receives it as worship. Earth recognizes it as transformation. From this moment forward, everything you touch carries the order of divine unity. It's often after the light has returned that the echoes of the past try to call you back. You begin to feel small tremors again, faint, familiar whispers of doubt that seem to sneak in through the cracks of peace. But you recognize them now. These are not new attacks, they're old ghosts testing your gates. The voices of fear that once commanded your attention now sound distant, almost hollow. You hear them, but they no longer hold authority. This is the nature of deliverance. Freedom doesn't erase memory, it redefines it. Fear may knock again, but it no longer finds an unlocked door. You've changed the locks, changed the language, changed the owner of your house. The mind that once hosted anxiety has become a temple of peace, and the enemy, though persistent, cannot dwell where worship has taken residence. The Word of God reminds us in the first letter of John, chapter 4, verse 4, "The one who is in you is greater than the one who is in the world." That truth is now your grounding. The same Spirit that raised Christ from the grave isn't a visitor, it's a resident. It doesn't just help you in moments of fear, it governs your entire being. That's why old fears are trying to find entry again. They've realized you're no longer compatible with them. You've outgrown the frequency of fear. The voices of doubt are clever. They don't always shout. Sometimes they whisper. They say things like, "You're changing too fast," or "What if this peace doesn't last?" They try to make you question the permanence of your healing. But transformation isn't fragile. What God rebuilds cannot crumble under old winds. What once broke you can't break you twice when you've been rebuilt by grace. Remember, fear doesn't need to be believed to be felt. It often appears just to see if you'll still bow. But now, when fear shows up, it's no longer a sign of weakness, it's proof of victory. Because fear only fights what threatens it. And you, reborn and realigned, are a threat to every shadow that once owned you. You've entered a stage of maturity now. The war hasn't ended, but you've learned how to fight differently. No longer panicking at every whisper of darkness, no longer doubting your own progress. You've learned to pause, to breathe, and to remember to let memory serve as a weapon instead of a wound. You recall the nights when you felt forsaken and realize now that you were never alone. You see how every silence was strategic, how every delay was divine training. Fear tried to tell you those were lost years. Heaven calls them foundation years. You weren't stuck, you were being strengthened. There's a quiet authority that grows in those who have overcome fear. You no longer chase validation, you embody peace. You don't need to defend your change. Your presence speaks for itself. You don't explain your growth to those who haven't witnessed your battles. You simply keep walking steady, anchored, aware that what God has done in you is irreversible. Even when old triggers try to resurface, the tone of a voice, a sudden disappointment, a memory that stings you no longer crumble. You simply breathe, remember truth, and respond with grace. That's the evidence of deliverance, not the absence of triggers, but the mastery of response. Fear's last strategy is nostalgia, reminding you of how safe it once felt to live small. But now you know the difference between safety and captivity. Safety never silenced your spirit. Captivity did. You can't unsee what freedom looks like, and you can't unknow who you've become. So, when fear tries to resurrect itself, let it witness its own funeral. The ground it once occupied is now holy. You are the walking evidence of resurrection, proof that fear can die and still leave you breathing. You don't need to declare victory every day to keep it. You need only to live it. Every peaceful breath you take is warfare. Every time you choose calm instead of chaos, heaven hears it as a song. Let your peace be your prophecy. Let your stillness be your sermon. The same Spirit that silenced the storm now lives in you, and that means every storm around you must obey. The voices of doubt will keep trying to test you. But remember, they can't live where they no longer belong. You are beyond their reach now. What once ruled you now reports to you. The fear that once dictated your steps now trembles at your silence. You have become the testimony fear never wanted, told the one where trembling turned into authority, and captivity became calling. You stand unshaken, aware that peace is not fragile, but fortified. The calm within you is no longer borrowed, it's built, anchored in every promise that carried you here. Now, your life itself preaches. Every breath declares freedom works. The echoes of fear grow quieter each day, drowned out by the steady rhythm of a heart fully healed. Faith has become more than belief to you. Now it's a discipline, a rhythm that carries you through both calm and chaos. You no longer chase emotional highs to feel close to God. You've learned that faith isn't proven in the fire of inspiration, but in the ashes of repetition, in those quiet days where nothing spectacular happens and yet you choose to trust again. The discipline of faith is the art of consistency in the unseen. It's waking up when prayers still feel unanswered and saying, "I will believe anyway." It's lifting your eyes toward heaven, even when clouds block the light. You've discovered that faith doesn't deny reality, it demands perspective. It teaches you to see storms as classrooms and pain as preparation. The scripture reminds us in the book of Hebrews, chapter 11, verse 6, "Without faith it is impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him." That verse no longer feels distant to you. It has become the pattern of your days. You understand now that pleasing God isn't about perfection, but persistence. It's not about flawless performance. It's about showing up when everything inside you says to stop. Faith is a daily decision, not a one-time declaration. You are learning to treat faith like muscle. Muscles only grow under pressure, so does belief. Every unanswered prayer, every waiting season, every trial that stretched you, those were divine weights designed to build endurance. And endurance is what separates believers from doubters. There's a maturity growing in you now. You don't flinch at delay anymore. You don't mistake silence for absence. You've stopped measuring God's love by what He gives and started measuring it by who He remains. That shift, that unseen internal change, is what heaven calls spiritual strength. Faith as discipline doesn't always look radiant. Some days it's simply holding steady. Some days it's whispering thank you through tears. Some days it's the quiet refusal to turn back. That's how champions are forged, not in moments of applause, but in moments of persistence. You've realized that obedience and faith are twins. One doesn't live without the other. Obedience is what faith looks like in motion, and faith is what obedience feels like inside. Together they build momentum, the kind that hell cannot halt. And still, God is patient with you. He doesn't demand flawless faith. He honors effort. Every time you choose to believe even a little, heaven multiplies it into much. Remember how the mustard seed was described not as the absence of doubt, but as the smallest spark capable of moving mountains. You've carried that seed through storms, and now it's taking root. This season you're walking through isn't punishment, it's preparation. The waiting, the repetition, the small acts of obedience that seem invisible, they are sacred. God hides miracles in monotony so that only the faithful will find them. The ones who keep walking when no one claps. The ones who believe when no one sees. Faith doesn't mean you never question. It means you bring your questions to God instead of your fears. It means you wrestle under the weight of doubt, but you wrestle toward the light. It means you walk while trembling, trusting that each step, however small, still counts as progress. Some days, faith will look like a roar. Other days, it will look like a whisper, but both are holy. Both move heaven, because faith isn't measured by volume, it's measured by endurance. You are being shaped into someone who won't need constant proof to stay faithful. You've tasted stability in uncertainty, peace in delay, purpose in pain. That's faith matured. That's the kind of trust that heaven can build kingdoms upon. You've learned to hold your faith like a compass, not a clock. The compass points forward, regardless of timing. It doesn't tell you when, it tells you where. Faith does the same. It doesn't answer your impatience, but it keeps you aligned with direction. And so you walk, step by step, not in haste, but in harmony. You've stopped running ahead or lagging behind. You move with the rhythm of grace, now steady, faithful, present. This discipline of faith is no longer a burden, it's become your heartbeat. Every pulse reminds you that trust has become your second nature. What once felt like effort now feels like oxygen. You live by faith because it's the only atmosphere where your spirit breathes freely. You've graduated from needing signs to simply believing. You've grown from seeking confirmation to becoming confirmation, a living proof that endurance births strength. Keep walking in this rhythm. Faith doesn't always shout, but it always sustains. And the longer you stay faithful, the louder your stillness speaks. Every steady step you take becomes a sermon heaven understands. You no longer chase miracles, you embody them. Faith has turned from something you practice into the person you've become, unwavering, luminous, and whole. Courage feels different now. It no longer burns with the wild fire of impulse, it glows with the quiet warmth of understanding. You used to think bravery was about charging into storms. Now you see it's about standing still in surrender, unflinching, unhurried, trusting that God has already gone before you. This is what it means to wear the mantle of the fearless. It isn't about appearing bold, it's about walking with unshakable peace when the world trembles. The fearless aren't reckless, they're rooted. They don't shout louder than fear, they outlast it. Heaven spoke once through the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 31, verse 6. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or terrified because of them. For the Lord your God goes with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. Those words don't just comfort, they commission. They are your inheritance now. You no longer pray to feel brave. You walk as one already clothed in divine strength. Every act of obedience has become a thread in your heavenly armor. Every yes to God has become another seam of steel. You are discovering that courage doesn't erase fear, it transcends it. Courage says, I see the danger, and I still choose to trust. It's not a denial of fear's existence, it's a declaration of its defeat. That's what it means to carry the mantle of the fearless, to wear divine confidence even while your knees tremble. Courage has changed your posture. It has straightened your spirit, lifted your head, and softened your heart. You no longer bow to anxiety or shrink in shame. You stand upright because heaven has claimed your stance as holy ground. Every step forward now carries the weight of generations. Your obedience ripples through bloodlines you've never met. Because when a chosen one becomes fearless, entire families are freed. Every time you stand instead of flee, Someone else watching finds their strength to rise. That's why heaven has called you torchbearer. You carry the light that reminds others they are not alone in the dark. The mantle you wear glows unseen, but its fire is felt. It's the calm that walks into chaos, the peace that walks into panic, the love that walks into anger and does not waver. You have become the kind of person the enemy fears, not because you fight loud, but because you refuse to fall apart. It wasn't the loudest that frightened darkness, it was always the steadfast. Those who endure without bitterness, those who serve without applause, those who keep shining when no one watches. You are one of them now, the unshaken, the refined, the crowned. Heaven has placed a mantle on your shoulders, not for display, but for duty. You carry responsibility wrapped in grace, and grace has made you strong. You don't just survive fire anymore, you carry it. You ignite courage wherever you go. And as this realization settles deep within you, something soft begins to stir. Gratitude rises not for the battles, but for the way they built you. You can feel heaven smiling through the silence, proud of what obedience has sculpted in you. You're no longer waiting for confirmation, you've become confirmation. If this moment feels like warmth on your spirit, let it stay a while. Let it remind you that this message isn't coincidence, it's continuation. You were never watching from the outside, you've been part of the story all along. So, if the light within you flickers as you read this, let that flicker find expression, not through obligation, but through beauty. When your heart feels full and you sense that this message has found its home inside you, let it travel further. Maybe that looks like a quiet like, the digital equivalent of a nod upward to heaven. Maybe it's a share, sending light into another screen that needs warmth tonight. And if you've felt these words like a river steady, purifying, alive, then perhaps you'll want to remain where this river flows. Let your subscribe be not a transaction, but a declaration: I choose to keep walking with light. Then, as the final act of reflection, if your soul agrees with this transformation, write it, comment, I carry fire, not as performance, but as poetry. It's your whisper into eternity, your quiet yes to heaven's mantle, because the moment you acknowledge the flame, it grows, and every small ember shared becomes part of a wildfire that no darkness can contain. You have become the living spark that reminds the world courage still lives, faith still burns, and obedience still changes everything. When you whisper, I carry fire, heaven hears more than a phrase, it hears ownership. It hears a life that no longer apologizes for its light, a spirit that finally understands it was born to illuminate every shadow it once feared. And as that fire settles into your bones, you become a living lighthouse, not loud, not forced, just steady, a flame that guides, heals, and awakens. The world may never know what it cost you to burn, but they will feel the warmth of your becoming. There is a quiet shift that happens when obedience becomes part of your nature, a moment when you realize that the transformation wasn't just for you. What God has been shaping within you begins to spill outward, touching people, environments, and atmospheres without you even trying. You start to see that your journey is not isolated, it is influential. Every step you've taken, every fear you've conquered, every whisper of yes has created a ripple far wider than your own life. Heaven speaks through the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 5, verse 16. Let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. That verse used to feel like encouragement, but now it feels like confirmation. Your obedience has become light, not the kind that blinds, but the kind that guides. It's the lantern glow that helps others find their footing in the dark. Without realizing it, you've become the proof that breakthrough is possible. People see the steadiness in your eyes now, the calm in your breath, the grounded way you move through storms. They don't know your entire story, but they feel the residue of heaven on you. This is the ripple of obedience. Your private victories become someone else's courage. Your endurance becomes someone else's template. The healing God built within you becomes a doorway for someone else to walk through. Light cannot shine without illuminating more than itself. You carry more impact than you know. Others begin to watch you differently, not because you're perfect, but because you're changed. They notice the peace that replaced panic. They notice the wisdom in your tone, the softness in your reactions, the grace in your decisions. What once triggered you no longer controls you. What once silenced you now strengthens others through your presence. And the beauty of this influence is that it isn't loud, it's lived. It flows from authenticity, not effort. You don't have to preach with your mouth. Your life has become the sermon. The way you forgive, the way you wait, the way you trust, the way you choose peace. These are chapters others quietly read. People who once didn't understand you begin to sense something holy in the way you walk now. Not holiness as perfection, but holiness as wholeness. You've become someone whose presence carries the fragrance of restoration. Someone whose footsteps echo hope. Someone whose silence speaks of God's faithfulness. The enemy fought your obedience so fiercely because he knew what you didn't, that your transformation would not end with you. You were never meant to be a container. You were meant to be a conduit. You were never meant to hold the light. You were meant to reflect it. And reflection always multiplies. Look at your life now. Think of the people who have softened because you softened. The ones who breathe easier because you learned how to breathe deeply. The ones who found words of courage because you dared to voice your own. Transformation travels. It doesn't stay where it started. Even the smallest acts of obedience ripple into eternity. A gentle word you spoke on a heavy day. A boundary you held with grace. A secret prayer you whispered for someone who never knew. A moment where you resisted fear and chose love instead. None of it vanished. Heaven recorded every ripple. You may never see all the results with your own eyes, but the spiritual realm sees clearly. Your journey has become a map for others. Your scars have become signposts. Your victories have become lanterns, guiding travelers you'll never meet this side of heaven. And perhaps the most astonishing part, you didn't set out to influence anyone. Influence wasn't the assignment. Obedience was. Influence became the overflow. That's how the kingdom works. God transforms one life deeply so that countless others can be transformed quietly. So now you walk with a new awareness, not of pressure, but of purpose. The light you carry isn't fragile anymore. It doesn't flicker in the wind. It burns steady, anchored in obedience and fueled by all the places God has brought you through. You've become a living testimony, a moving miracle, a reminder that fear can break, but the faithful cannot. When people look at you now, they don't see the trembling soul you once were. They see resilience wearing flesh. They see courage wrapped in gentleness. They see the reflection of a God who knows how to turn ashes into radiance. This ripple will continue. Every day you walk in truth, in love. In obedience, the light multiplies, and heaven smiles, because what began as your healing has now become your calling. Your journey no longer moves in circles but in waves, each one touching shores you'll never see. Each one carrying traces of the God who rebuilt you from the inside out. And as you continue walking, your light will not dim. It will deepen, drawing weary souls toward hope, proving through your very existence that obedience always multiplies into destiny. There is a moment in every spiritual journey when all the threads finally pull together, when every fear you fought, every step you obeyed, every tear you surrendered begins to make sense. It doesn't come with fanfare. It doesn't arrive with trumpets. It comes quietly, like dawn slipping over a dark horizon. You realize that the God who walked with you in fire, in silence, in trembling, is the same God who now whispers peace over your soul. The final command is not complicated. It is not wrapped in mystery. It is simple, steady, eternal. Do not fear, not because danger no longer exists, but because fear no longer owns you. Not because the path is without shadows, but because you have become familiar with the light. The instruction doesn't shrink in importance simply because it is simple. In fact, its simplicity reveals its power. Fear once dictated your rhythm. It once weighed on your chest like an anchor. It once convinced you that your future was fragile and your heart too brittle to carry divine purpose. But the one who formed you never agreed with fear's predictions. He knew your strength before you ever felt it. He knew your resilience before you ever lived it. He knew the authority woven into your bones before you ever heard your own voice shift from trembling to truth. The ancient words recorded in the book of Philippians, chapter 4, verse 7, declare, "And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus." That peace is no longer a concept to you, it has become your companion. It guards you. Not passively, but actively. It stands at the borders of your heart like a sentinel, refusing entry to the intrusions that once overwhelmed you. Where fear once found open doors, it now finds fortified gates. Where anxiety once crept in unnoticed, peace now stands watch. God did not ask you to become fearless through force. He made you fearless through formation, through discipline, through surrender. You learned to trust him not because life became easier, but because he remained present when everything else felt unstable. That kind of faith cannot be shaken, because it was built through shaking. This final command, do not fear, isn't meant to silence your humanity. It's meant to free it. It invites you to live without the chains that once dictated your decisions. It invites you to move with confidence instead of caution, clarity instead of confusion, courage instead of compromise. It calls you into a life where obedience feels natural, where peace feels normal, where faith flows like breath. You were never meant to tiptoe through your destiny. You were meant to walk it with authority. Not arrogance, authority. The difference is profound. Arrogance boasts, authority breathes. Arrogance demands attention, authority carries presence. Arrogance is loud, authority is luminous. And you are luminous now, not because of who you are alone, but because of who walks within you. As you look back, you can see the pattern more clearly. The fear you started with was raw. The obedience you offered was trembling. The healing you gained was gradual. The strength you carry now is undeniable. Fear didn't break you, obedience did. It broke the chains that held you. It broke the lies that shaped you. It broke the cycles that trapped you. It broke the ceilings placed over your calling. Now you stand at a threshold, not as the person you once were, but as the one heaven always saw. The timid heart has become a courageous one. The wavering spirit has become resolute. The scattered pieces have become whole. And the story that once felt fragmented has become a testimony stitched together by grace. You don't have to fear the future anymore. It isn't a dark hallway, it's a doorway. Every step forward is blessed because you walk with the one who already stands at the end of the path. He is not just behind you as your protector, he is ahead of you as your forerunner. So breathe now, deeply. Let the final command settle into the chambers of your spirit. Do not fear. Not because life is predictable, but because God is faithful. Not because you feel strong, but because He is strong in you. You journey forward as one who has been prepared, refined, strengthened, and crowned. Fear may try to whisper again someday, but it will no longer recognize the territory because the land it once occupied has been claimed by peace. You are not afraid anymore, not because nothing threatens you, but because nothing owns you except the one who chose you. You now move through life as one awakened, no longer startled by shadows, but guided by a deeper knowing. What once silenced you now strengthens you, and every breath feels like reclaimed territory. Your journey continues beyond these words, unfolding, expanding, rising, and as you walk forward, heaven walks with you, turning every step into evidence that fear no longer shapes your story. If your heart has traveled through every word of this journey and felt something shift, something settle, something awaken, then let this final moment be a soft landing for your spirit, not an ending, but a gentle breath that reminds you you are still becoming, still rising, still unfolding into the fullness that has always waited within you. You've walked through fire, silence, shadows, and revelation. You've learned to recognize fear, confront it, break it, and rise above it. And now, at this closing chapter, you stand different, lighter in your soul, stronger in your spirit, steadier in your steps. This transformation wasn't forced. It grew in you like dawn grows into morning, quiet, relentless, beautiful. So, if these words have held you, lifted you, or met you exactly where your heart was trembling, let the way you respond be just as gentle, not pressured, not demanded, simply offered. If the message warmed something inside you, let your light be a candle you place on the windowsill, a small flame that says, "There is light here." If you felt this journey touch you deeply, let your share be a lantern you pass to another traveler, someone still stumbling through their own dark valley. You may never know whose night you brighten, but heaven does. And if this space has become a refuge for your soul, a place where your spirit finds clarity and strength, let your subscribe be your quiet way of returning, of saying, "I want to keep walking with this light." Then, if you feel moved not by instruction, but by resonance, leave a comment. Even just a few heartfelt words. Your voice may become the echo that steadies someone else. You are part of something luminous now, and how beautiful it is to shine together